What crazy stuff happened in the year 2001 that got overshadowed by September 11th? Air Transat Flight 236. Plane from Toronto to Lisbon ran out of fuel in the middle of the Atlantic and glided 75 miles to an airport in the Azores and safely landed. Longest glide of a passenger airliner. Happened 3 weeks before September 11th. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/air_transat_flight_236. Congressman Gary Condit having an affair with 24-year-old intern, Chandra Levy, who went missing and was later found murdered. A hang glider accidentally crashed into the Statue of Liberty. American Airlines Flight 587, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/American_Airlines_flight_587. An Airbus A300 crashed in Queens, New York 2 months after September 11th. It was the second deadliest aviation accident in U.S. history, and not well remembered. A huge investigation revealed that the McDonald's monopoly campaign was fraud since 1989 and had almost no legitimate winners. One guy was giving winning pieces to friends and family, and later the mafia. When this broke, it was mere weeks before September 11th, so it got quickly overshadowed. Edit, double checking my facts, it went to trial on September 10th, wild. Nepalese Royal Massacre. June 1, 2001. 9 members of the royal family were killed, including the king. It is thought that the crown prince, who died 3 days later after being in a coma and being crowned the new king, was responsible. And people say the plot of Hamlet is over the top. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/nepalese_royal_massacre, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/nepalese_royal_massacre. I lived where the anthrax hit in 2001, just days after September 11th. They had to close down our post office and for weeks there was no mail, then finally bills came radiated and in plastic bags. You couldn't open any of the mail, it was just stuck together. And this was back in the days before you could pay bills online. The McDonald's monopoly scandal. The FBI uncovered this massive network of people involved in claiming all the prizes that were being stolen by the head of security at the company McDonald's had hired to run the game. Hainan Island incident in April 2001. A Chinese jet clipped a U.S. aircraft off the coast of China. The jet crashed in the sea, and the U.S. aircraft landed in China. First major geopolitical mess of George Bush's presidency. Gave the world a somewhat major incident. I got briefly concerned as a teenager. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Hainan_island_incident. System of a Down's Toxicity was released on Sept 4th. Slayer's God Hates Us All released on Sept 11th. George Carlin records an album on Sept 10th called I Kinda Like It When a Lot of People Die. In the set's 10-minute closer, Uncle Dave, Carlin explains why he likes big, fatal disasters with lots of dead people, asking, you know what's the best thing I can hear on television? We interrupt this program, you know the worst thing I can hear? No one was hurt. I'm always rooting for a really high death toll, that's why I like natural disasters. An earlier joke in the set includes reference to Osama bin Laden and an exploding airplane. Needless to say, the album was shelved until about 2016. Mad cow disease, Michael Jordan coming out of retirement for the second time, Aaliyah plane crash. The movie Zoolander flopped, relatively speaking, at the box office because it came out right after September 11th. Sept 7, 2001 U.S. government announces they won't break up Microsoft as a monopoly. Forgotten in Rumsfeld's speech about the missing funds, the clearest and most important transformation is from a bipolar Cold War world where threats were visible and predictable, to one in which they arise from multiple sources, most of which are difficult to anticipate, and many of which are impossible even to know today. Also, the purpose of the speech was to cut military spending and shift some military control of logistics and base infrastructure to the private sector. Wasn't that Chandra Levi lady taking up most of the headlines at the time? The murder of Henryk Sawayak. He's known as the last person killed in NYC on September 11, 2001, right before midnight, and it wasn't related to the terror attacks. He was gunned down in Brooklyn when he mistakenly went there to start a new job. His murder remains unsolved. The Boston Globe had all the information ready to release uncovering the rampant pedophilia being covered up by the Catholic Church. After September 11th, they decided to wait to release it. I saw a Dateline episode about a woman from upstate New York who went missing on September 11th and there wasn't enough manpower to investigate because of it. Found a link, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/disappearance_Michelle_Harris?WPROV=SFTI1 number sign. Cantor Fitzgerald Brokerage was under investigation of prolific sexual misconduct and harassment, if I recall correctly. Then the plane practically wiped them out. It was a huge year for movies. Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter debuted. The first Shrek, Planet of the Apes, Ocean's 11, Legally Blonde, A Beautiful Mind, Black Hawk Down, The Fast and the Furious, Monsters Incorporated, Princess Diaries, Moulin Rouge, and Training Day, and more. The 2001 Aspen plane crash. It was overshadowed by September 11th for pretty obvious reasons, but it's still a crazy story. A bunch of people, mostly young people in their low 20s who worked in entertainment, were on their way to Aspen for a birthday weekend to go skiing. An older colleague decided to host the trip, chartering a private jet to get them there. At some point, the pilots informed him that they weren't going to make Aspen's strict landing curfew, and also, there was a massive snowstorm. It was going to be both illegal, and far too dangerous for them to land in Aspen, and they were going to have to divert the plane. He threw a giant fit. He told them, "No, you have to land in Aspen, I spent a lot of money to have a dinner party in Aspen, you're gonna get us there, snowstorm and FAA restrictions be damned." While preparing to attempt landing, the charter customer then went into the cockpit, presumably to intimidate the pilots into meeting his demands. The pilots didn't want to upset him, so they attempted a landing, even lying to the air traffic controller about having visibility of the runway. So they attempted a blind landing. When the pilot realized he was about to crash, he tried to unsuccessfully abort the landing. This caused the wing to slam into a hillside, and everyone went cartwheeling into their death. Bodies still strapped to their seats were scattered across a road. They didn't crash due to terrorism, hijacking, or a mechanical failure. They crashed because the customer is always right. Mariners won 116 games. Thuy Trang, Yellow Power Ranger from MMPR, passed away in a car accident Sept 3, 2001. I was a big MMPR fan and I don't remember hearing about that. My mom died on September 8, 2001. My 10th birthday was September 6, 2001. Needless to say, I could not have cared less about 9/11. In summer of 2001, Fox aired a documentary-styled reality show called Murder in Small Town X. The finale aired just a week before September 11th. The winner of the first and only season was a firefighter, and he was one of the first responders at the World Trade Center that was killed. His body wouldn't be discovered until 2 months later. With so much else that happened on September 11th, one of the victims being a reality TV star was surprisingly rarely brought up. In March 2001, Drew Bledsoe signed a then-record 10-year, $103 million contract. During the second game of the season, September 23, he got hit so hard he almost died. His replacement went on to become the greatest QB of all time. The disappearance of Sneha Philip, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/disappearance_of_Sneha_n_Philip. Officially, she's listed as a victim of 9/11, but opinions vary as to what really happened. * She had rushed to the scene and was killed while trying to help victims. She was a doctor. * She was in the WTC on unrelated business, possibly having breakfast at the Windows on the World restaurant, when the attacks occurred. * She was murdered nearby in an incident unrelated to the terrorist attacks, and any evidence of the crime, as well as her remains, was lost in the rubble and by diversion of law enforcement resources. * She chose to use the confusion of the day to disappear and start a new life elsewhere. She was known to be having difficulties in both her personal and her professional life. City Patty was discovered in 2001. City Patty is a genus of overshadowed dinosaur that lived in Asia during the late Cretaceous period, about 75 million to 71 million years ago. City Patty is one of the best-known overshadoweds thanks to a number of well-preserved specimens, including individuals found in brooding positions atop nests of eggs. These nesting specimens have helped to solidify the link between non-avian dinosaurs and birds. City Patty was among the largest overshadoweds. It is estimated to have been up to 3 m in length and to have weighed about 80 kilograms. Its skull was highly pneumatized, short, and had a characteristic crest formed by the premaxilla and nasal bones with robust, parrot-like jaws. Both upper and lower jaws were toothless and developed a horny beak. The arms and tail are known to have supported large feathers. George Harrison's death the following November probably would have been much bigger news than it was had 9/11 not happened. It also probably would have been under more public scrutiny. He was stabbed 40 times by a home intruder the previous year, and it's been suspected that's what led to his decline in health and later his death. All of the headlines at the time just said he died of cancer, and there was little public discourse or usual celebrity gossip about it. If 9/11 didn't happen, we would all probably think there were 2 Beatles who were murdered by crazy people. The Boston Globe did their massive, explosive investigation into sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, and around the time of 9/11, they were all set to release their report. They decided to wait, and good thing they did, because it most likely wouldn't have been as impactful as it ended up being. I recall the dot-com bust being in full swing. Lots of companies going under and layoffs. The disappearance of Chandra Levy. It was the top story, then dropped off the news completely. Steve Austin aligned himself with Vince McMahon. There were 3 separate shark attacks in the USA that summer, leading Time magazine to dub it the Summer of the Shark. There was a ton of news coverage about it. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/summer_of_the_shark. Halfway across the country, my friend lost their family member on the same morning, Sept 11, 2001, when he tried to stop a car thief. Mariah Carey's album and soundtrack to the same titled movie, Glitter. Hear Me Out. The album was basically a big release to her fans as she rode her R&B and pop fame from the 90s right into the 2000s. It featured some of the biggest R&B and hip-hop artists at the time like Busta Rhymes, Ludacris, and Fabulous, so it was going to be a hit. Guess what else took a hit the same day of release? Her album significantly underperformed, forcing Virgin to drop their contract with her entirely. This was a stain on her career to this day, and it's something she has mentioned before. The album was also never found on any streaming platforms until 2020, which by then had amassed a cult following, and fans stated, the album was ahead of its time. I always found that to be a strange, but fun fact about Mariah Carey lore. A ridiculous amount of Catholic priests were getting charged with raping children. Facts. The Seattle Mariners won 116 baseball games that year, which is insane. Hadn't been done since the Chicago Cubs in 1906. That was the best year of my life until the playoff series they lost to the Yankees. And 9/11. Aaliyah died August 25, 01. I feel like we didn't even get to grieve her and then 9/11 happened. The front page story in a lot of papers on the morning of September 11 was about a Houston mom who drowned her 5 children in a bathtub. Michigan native here, I've got a local one, the burning of Rainbow Farm, in Cass County. Rainbow Farm was a well-known marijuana campground/concert space run by a gay libertarian couple in Newport Township, very rural part of the state. They regularly hosted marijuana cultural and pro-legalization events. This was pre-legalization, but there were still plenty of pot festivals around Michigan, and they were early organizers of the statewide legalization initiative. Basically, a local prosecutor and law enforcement got tired of tolerating them, and started a harassment campaign, looking for any excuse to search the place and charge the owners. Eventually they did, and it started a long series of events culminating in the couple being charged with a variety of drug, weapon, and tax-related felonies. The cops took their 11-year-old son and put him in foster care, and started the process of seizing the property using civil asset forfeiture. On August 31, 2001, the couple, Tom and Raleigh, skipped their court date and instead started burning every structure on Rainbow Farm to the ground. They started a standoff with the police, and pretty quickly the FBI was called in. Within a few days both men were shot dead by law enforcement. The autopsy showed that Tom was shot 5 times in the head, and 3 times in the chest, just for good measure, I guess. This all happened days before September 11, and likely would have been a huge national story. Writer Dean Kuipers, a Michigan native, wrote a book on the incident, Burning Rainbow Farm, published in 2006. At the time I was a reporter for a local NPR station, and I interviewed Mr. Kuipers on air after reading the whole book. It is a crazy story, a horrible tragedy, and well worth a read.